Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to have you here. My name is Ianson. I am the interim head of the Unstereotype Alliance Secretariat, which, if you don't know much about that, we are a thought and action platform that's convened by UN Women. And our mission is to eradicate all harmful stereotypes from advertising and media content. And we have been working on that mission for 8 years now. And it's so important for us to have these conversations that can with our members. And everybody here alongside me today are members of the Alliance, all working with the same goal in mind. So today's conversation is all about building a more inclusive digital world. And as part of this discussion, we're going to be speaking about representation. We're going to be talking about the industry at large. We'll be talking about the work, the power of community. And we'll be talking about how digital solutions and innovation can really drive inclusion and diversity. And of course, we will be talking about AI, because it can and we can't not. So we have a lot to cover. So I'll just introduce my esteemed panelists here, and then we'll get started. So we have Charlie Doolittle, who is Head of Public Partnerships at Understood.org. Cassandra Illidge, Vice President of Global Partnerships at Getty Images. Rachel Lowenstein, Co-founder and Chief Creative Officer at the New Project. And Christina Mallon, Head of Inclusive Design, Microsoft. And you're all sat in order. That was accidental. And I'm going to start with you, Christina, because we have been working together for a long time through the Alliance, but on a new initiative that's particularly exciting. And it's founded on the very principle of better representing the disability community in the digital space. So can you share a bit about that?
I mean, everyone here on the panel is working to just increase representation of different marginalized communities. For me, disability is really personal. My arms became paralyzed at 22 due to ALS, and I was working in advertising along with Rachel at WPP, and I didn't see myself or anyone with disability in our ads or even like thought within our products. And as we are in this new AI revolution, I knew that there would be not a lot of disability representation in the models. So together with the Unstereotype Alliance and different NGOs from around the world, we are trying to have different communities tell us how they want to be represented in text-to-image and text-to-video models, and provide and help get data through partnerships and annotate data to show how they should be represented, to really be in their hands how they're represented. Because again, I really wish the community asked me, especially in the advertising community, how do you want to be represented as a disabled person? And we think representation is really one of the biggest barriers to the disability divide. So working together to really get great images of disability out there and into the models.
Amazing. We're very excited to share more about that later on in the year. And Cassandra, many of the themes Christina's spoken about there about representation is absolutely critical to the work that you've been doing as well, and really how visual narratives can celebrate communities. Can I pass to you to share a bit about some of the work you've been doing in that space?
Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. To share the work that we're doing with historically black colleges and universities in the United States. I don't know how many of you are familiar with them, but there are over 100 of them in the United States, and they have been just providing an opportunity for education and excellence in the communities since the 1800s. So think about the amount of photography that's sitting behind closed doors, the amount of history that just has been locked away. The program that we've built is all about making sure that not only the history is celebrated, it's respected, it's protected, and that the institutions, but also the wider audience, can have access to it.
Thank you. And I don't think it could be more important at a time right now to have all communities being seen. Rachel, you worked actually with Getty Images as well on a project called Autistic Out Loud, which was obviously, well, not obviously, but it was very much focused on inclusion, but with a self-led lens. Can you talk about why that element particularly was so important?
Yeah, so Autistic Out Loud was a campaign that we launched in partnership with our friends at Getty and an app called Hiki, which is a app that connects neurodivergent people to friendships, relationships, and community. When we were concepting the idea, because we knew we wanted to attack this issue that autistic folks, and I'm autistic just for context, are highly misrepresented and stereotyped in culture, we started playing with this idea of self-portraiture. And the reason why we leaned into that, rather than having the Getty photographers or professional photographers taking pictures of autistic folks, is because most autistic representation in media up until very recently has been led by non-autistic voices, right? You see films, you see stories, books, and they're usually from the lens of maybe parents, caregivers, or other well-intentioned people who want to represent autism. And it's usually like highly pitting type stuff, right? It's usually pity porn or inspiration porn, and it does not represent the diversity of autism and culture. If you search autism on any visual search engine, whether it's Google or Pinterest, you're going to see stereotypes, and I would say 95% of all of the content. So in partnership with Getty, we commissioned hundreds of photos from autistic creators. I was one of them, but we had about 9 others from various races and ethnicities, genders, lived experiences, geographies all around the world, showing that autism does not look like a young white boy that you usually see in media. It doesn't look like puzzle pieces, which the autistic community kind of hates. And these were really beautiful photos, and we really wanted to lean into the community to co-create with Getty Images and with Hiki to show their lived experiences rather than letting other people speak for them.
Amazing. And I think if you haven't seen any of those images, you can see the authenticity just shine through those. They're such incredible images. And Charlie, we've been talking a bit more about the content visuals up until now. So if we could take a bit of a zoom out and talk about how the workplace and building a culture of inclusion can really help to ensure this work comes to be in existence.
Thank you. So I'm with Understood.org. We're a social impact organization focused on neurodiversity. And content is one of the most important things that we produce. We believe that powerful content can change the world. So this question is one that's really important to us. And I would zoom in on 4 different ingredients. We think about physical spaces, digital spaces, process, and culture. So when we think about physical spaces, obviously physical accessibility is a no-brainer. That should be a prerequisite, a floor, if you will. But then we also think about sensory experiences. So different ways that color theory can impact how you feel and interact in a space. We have plant walls that help people feel grounded and have a calming effect, especially for neurodivergent people. And maybe most importantly, there's choice. You can go where it's loud, you can go where it's quiet, you can go where there's a big group, where there's a small group, where you're independently working. So that physical space is very important. We also think about digital spaces in a new way, especially since COVID. So digital accessibility, again, is kind of a prerequisite. So making sure things like PDFs are legible with a screen reader, the basics, if you will. But then we also think about digital practices. So making sure that we have closed captions turned on all the time, no matter who's in the room, making sure that we are using note takers to follow up to kind of reduce the cognitive load for people in the room that don't need to remember everything or take notes themselves. So those digital spaces and physical spaces obviously interact and are intertwined in kind of a hybrid work environment, so that starts to bleed into process. When we think about process, we think about human-centered design, so making sure representation is a part of the input from upstream to downstream, and making sure that we are centering humans in the process, the humans actually conducting the work as well. And then, of course, we think about choice for optimization, so different ways to participate. Some people like a live brainstorm. Others want to think in advance and come prepared. So making sure that we have processes in place to allow that to flourish. And then finally, maybe most importantly, is culture. So maybe more specifically, I'd say a culture of curiosity. So we're constantly kind of asking ourselves, how can we do better? How can we further optimize? How can we further leverage the unique strengths of everybody involved? So with these ingredients, we believe we end up with a product that's not just stronger, but more powerful.
Amazing, thank you. I think lots of really clear, tangible examples there. And I've been to understood.org's office space, and it is the perfect example of how to create that beautiful space for multiple needs. Cassandra, I'd like to talk about partnerships. Well, I'd like you to talk about partnerships, actually. And I know you've led some collaborations that look to help build a more inclusive society, which is, the point of this conversation today. And can you talk about why the model of partnerships is so important and some of the work that you've done in that space?
Thank you. Well, my life work is partnerships. I mean, obviously, we can't do this work alone. And learning from those who are impacted directly is really important in order for you to do it in an organic way, but also to build a system that is long-term, as opposed to something that is just, checking a box. And we've seen how some organizations are now dealing with the impact of checking a box and not authentically checking in and being a part of the community. So partnerships with, let's start with the HBCUs. Those are our partners. I'm on campus. I actually met a young lady here at this session who went to one of the schools, Prairie View A&M University in Texas. I work with 10 schools. I'm on campus. I work with the archivist, the president's office, the head of comms, the institutional advancement. It is a top-down, bottom-up, experience. Also, I bring partners in, organizations who really believe in the work. So Denny's is involved. They are providing stipends for students working on the program. I work with Epson. They are donating scanners, professional grade scanners, to the program, to the institutions. And then we're working with them, the institutions directly, to understand the power of intellectual property, trademark. Their word, their history is important. And bringing in partners is really important to that. The other part of my job is working with brands, helping them monetize their content. So that's the BBC, Disney, large organizations that have a wealth of content that, our platform provides an easy way for them to actually monetize it, bring it to a global audience. And we're bringing the same principles to the HBCU community. So partnerships is very key, and if you really want to work with a community, you have to actually build that out with organizations that have already been doing the work. When we started this program in 2021, we did not represent any HBCUs. We have a gap in historical content, but also contemporary content. There's a lot of material that's produced today, and now we have signed contributors from HBCUs. That's impact. It's not about just the past and preserving it. It's actually helping to provide an opportunity for those here now. And then as far as future, we started a mentorship program. So there are students who are very talented who don't have a clear path towards professional photography or video. And so we started to create opportunities for them. We have a partnership with Major League Baseball, and in a month we will be working with them on this HBCU Swingman Classic, where we're bringing in about 3 students who will shoot the actual game. And they will be credited for their work and paid as contributors. And that's really important to us, to pay the contributor base, the community.
Wow, thank you. Such powerful examples of partnership and future-proofing those partnerships as well, which is so critical. Christina, I'm going to ask you a bit more on the Data Disability Stewardship project. It's a great example of a community-driven project, but it also leverages the power of AI. Building on the future-proofing point there, how will that future-proof the involvement of the community as that progresses?
Yeah, we are hoping that how we're working with the community to really look at how they are represented in text-to-image and text-to-video models, and we'll also open source these models. will just show other model makers, other brands on how you can co-create. Ensuring that they are paid is a huge thing we think about. And also ensuring how we're educating these communities on how to interact with AI, build with AI, and create the data models themselves. So by giving the community the education, the money, and the opportunity, we're hoping that other companies, other NGOs understand on how they can make an impact on how they're represented in these models in the future.
Amazing. I'm so excited to share more about that. And Rachel, from your perspective and lived experience, can you talk about how you think AI can be leveraged? There's lots of discussion about optimization, but can you talk about, well, how that might be useful, but also how it can help build more connections with the disability community as well?
Yeah, I said this on a panel the other day, so forgive me if you heard this, but I use AI as my neurotypical bestie every single day. I think it's, we hear ad nauseum at this point, especially at CAN, people talking about using AI to unlock creativity, which is certainly true. For me, it just helps me unlock my brain even more. If you're neurodivergent or autistic, you probably struggle with executive functioning. There's things like autistic or ADHD inertia, where you just have a hard time getting started on tasks. And there's a lot of AI tools. Goblin Tools is my absolute favorite. It was created by an ADHDer to help neurodivergent people with tasks. You can choose the spiciness level. So if you are feeling like really spicy in the brain, you put it all the way up at the high level, and it will break down even the most complex task into really simple things that you can do. So if you need to work on a program with HBCUs and around archivist and grant work, you can put exactly what you need to do in there, and it will break down every single step you need to do. And as somebody who's autistic, that is like quite literally helping me break down a barrier that I've struggled with my whole life. And I've had to just navigate and kind of go through a lot of turmoil that maybe other people don't. So it's an accessibility tool, right? That's how I use it every single day, beyond some of the other stuff that other people are using it for. I think about what are the things that I'm struggling with and how can I use AI as an access tool to break down that barrier so the world doesn't feel so disabling to me.
Thank you. Amazing. And Charlie, this is a bit of a big question, so sorry. But as we continue to see AI permeate our lives even more, I think lots of conversation here at CAN about that, but great examples of how it can empower. But I'd really like to ask you, how can we balance the equation between humanity and technology? Because there is this conversation around getting the right balance. So, big question.
Yeah, this one's cerebral for sure. So, as we think about the last year, the last 5 years, the last 10 years, AI really came to prevalence to humans could do. Generating information or answering questions or writing a piece of poetry or making us laugh, all of a sudden there's technology doing this. And I think that there's a bit of that that's a little bit unnerving. And it certainly draws the question, well, what actually makes us human? And the question about how humans are different than technology becomes a little bit more complex, right? So we know that our capacity to create is something that AI can mimic. But we also experience things that AI cannot experience, so we can create in ways that AI cannot create, right? We're sitting here in this beautiful setting, and we can feel the breeze on our skin, and I don't know about you all, but I feel inspired, certainly. AI doesn't feel inspired, right? And so when we think about how we can wield AI, I think the question is really how can we wield AI to further express our humanity, and how does that relationship start to develop and become more interesting? And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I think unlocking creativity, sure, but maybe more focused creativity, allowing us to really spend our time doing things that only humans can do, unlocking accessibility in a way that is beyond anything we've imagined in the digital world so far. It really becomes the diversity of lived experience, neurodiversity that become the inputs to AI. So how can those be further expressed and further leveraged? So I think we're certainly just on the precipice of it, but a lot to look forward to.
Definitely, and as long as it's built with human-centered design and thinking about these are cognition tools, so we need to ensure it's built across the cognitive spectrum, and I think that's really exciting when brands can get that right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've touched on lots of themes around the importance of community in the digital space, in everything that we do, in partnerships, the power of partnerships. And I think there's lots of exciting ways that inclusivity can be brought to the forefront through all of those things. But I'd like to finish with a question to you all, which is to finish this sentence. An inclusive digital world is where? So, Christina, I'm going to start with you.
An inclusive digital world is everywhere, and everyone sees themselves reflected in it.
An inclusive digital world is where people feel like they belong and they don't have to hide online or in communities, and they feel safe to express themselves.
It's a world where I'm seen, I'm heard, and respected.
An inclusive digital world is where we are all affirmed and we can all thrive.
Well, I can't beat that, so I think we should leave it there. Thank you so much to my panelists, and thank you all for joining us today.